Bigger than capes.
Give me some insight.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Right.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by Angela. How you doing, Angela?
I'm doing all right, thank you.
That was my most fake telephone presenter's voice, and nothing I can do about it now. How have you been? It's been about 7 days, and
it's been
that.
No, it might not even be that at time of recording. It's been some days. They have existed. I have lived through them.
You been busy in the last few days? I don't know.
I've not been terribly busy. I have, because I wrote that article for biggerthancapes.com, for those of you who haven't checked out our website, shameless plug. I have been diving back into the classic Valiant and being baffled and confused and puzzled at every turn and loving every minute of it.
It's, I mean, as your article does explain, it's a complicated universe that if you read from the start in order all the way through, does make sense. Yeah. But that's incredibly difficult to do. Yes.
Yeah, I have finally got my lovely foil covered Exo Mano #1. Which, I've been after that a while. But I am missing the fact that we don't have comic book fairs anymore, because if you're looking for classic Valiant, the way to pick it up and pick it up cheaply is to go to your second-hand comic book fairs, and they haven't happened for 12 months. So I've been forced to go to the scalpers on eBay, and it's been painful.
I'm very aware that just before lockdown started for the first time, I was meant to be going to a comic book fair to pick up the slipcase collection of the Unity trades.
Oh, yes.
Which I still haven't got, and as it's now a year on, I feel like the chances of that guy still holding on to that for me are pretty slim at this point.
You never know, he might have it in his, somewhere in a cupboard.
Somewhere with my name scrawled across it.
Yeah.
Zach promised he'd buy this at the tail end of 2019, and now.
Yeah.
I always felt that was going to be the easiest way to read Unity, and it's probably not. Well,
the thing is it sort of plays into, which rereading some of these other ones, I have now realised that little bits of Unity still sneak their way into the even non-Unity issues.
Yeah, it kind of bleeds out into everything.
It's just everywhere. It's just all over the place. And unless you've read, thank God I've read Unity. I don't understand it, but I've read it. So I have some knowledge. So when they bring stuff up like, hey, so this happened when they were in the faraway future weirdness land, and I'm like, oh yes, I remember that. There were dinosaurs. And there is a great joke actually in Rise Zero where Jeff runs to see Arik, and Arik's still a dick. He doesn't listen to Jeff. God,
some things never
Arik.
Change.
I hate Arik so much. And Jeff's like, you've got to listen to me. He's like, yeah, well, last time I listened to you, I got bitten in half by a dinosaur. I'm not helping you.
That's pretty strong, though, to be fair.
Yeah, but he still doesn't, he's still a dick, so.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because Unity always almost feels like the kind of event that, because it happens outside of reality,
it shouldn't affect everything. And
people probably should have had a whole mind wipe, don't really remember it situation.
Yeah, but no, they remember everything that happened. And it feeds into everything they do constantly. There's little callbacks. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
That is really weird. It's been a while since I've done any 90s Valiant reading, but inevitably I will at some point do some more of it. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I've still got a lot. I know when we last could go to comic book fairs, I did pick up a big chunk of secret weapons, and
Yes, you did. Yeah.
which I've still not touched. It's just didn't seem like it was time, and I think that's the thing. There's so much 90s Valiant that I feel like I want to check out, but in reality, I know that's not entirely true. I know both of us have picked up some stuff from like the later 90s Acclaim era.
Yeah.
That we don't really need.
No.
I know I've got some issues of stuff like, is it called Punks? That was like,
oh God, yeah.
Keith Giffen. I think there's only like 3 issues. I think I might have all 3 of those, and I've not read any of it. And I've got some real Acclaim era garbage that.
I will say, the Acclaim stuff is in a way easier because there's less issues of most titles, and it's just
that is true.
And there's not this vast universe-spanning event that you must read in order to understand. It's much more random and, in a way, easier, and also that makes it worse.
Very much true. Very much true. Very much so. Very true. It's, I don't know. I've only read all the way through Quantum and Woody and Garth Ennis's Shadow Man from the Acclaim era.
Which are the best 2 books from that era.
And that's saying something, because the Shadow Man book is not great.
No. And yet, when you stack it up against Ninjak...
Oh, yeah, 5 stars.
Yeah.
5 stars, would recommend.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely check out Garth Ennis's Shadow Man. It's basically what was allegedly going to be the plot for the video game, but no one's really sure what the plot for the video game is.
No, Acclaim certainly weren't.
Oh, mental. Okay, so other than Valiant diving, anything else? Or
no, well, aside from Graffity's Wall, the graphic novel, which I believe we are discussing.
We are allegedly, yeah.
I've started Vagrant Queen, but I haven't got very far with it yet.
Okay.
Because I have a physical copy, but it came with some of the pages cut in half. So it's not exactly been an easy read. It's been like one of those flip books where you can change things around. So yeah, I'm slowly trying to read that without the thing falling apart. It's not hard. It's hard.
I do like Vagrant Queen a lot. I started reading the 2nd volume and never finished it, which I need to do at some point. And I also started the TV show and only watched about 2 episodes, so I need to do that as well. But let me know what you think at the end of that. Vagrant Queen I feel like it is entirely your kind of book.
Yeah, from what I've read so far, I am enjoying it, and I would probably enjoy it more if the pages were whole, to be honest.
That's something of a requirement, I think.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, I could get another, but if you have to return it, it's a lot of effort in a pandemic. And also, do I want to spend out yet more money on digital? At the moment, I'll just cope with my little weird copy that the pages are in various pieces. And I will read it, and then if I enjoy it that much, I probably will buy it in another format anyway. So I'm not really helping myself here, am I?
There's something about the comic books that are cut in half that does seem to happen too frequently for my liking, and it never happens with regular books, does it? You never pick up You never go to Waterstones and start reading your book and go, oh no, all of this is sliced in half.
Yeah.
But for some reason with comics, the spines that have been kind of crinkled, pages that haven't been cut properly and then have been folded over to try and hide the shame.
My favourite was, I can't even remember what it was, but I think it was Captain America, the Winter Soldier. I think it was the 2nd volume or the 1st volume of that bit of the run. And the cover said Captain America, the Winter Soldier. And inside was a completely different book.
I have to ask, how long did it take you to realise?
Pretty early on, because I can't remember what the book was, which is really bad. And I've got rid of it now. But it had a green-haired lady in it. And I didn't remember any green-haired lady.
Was it Sword? or like Agents of like the
It wasn't
Kira
even a
Gillan sword
Marvel book.
or...
It
oh, right,
wasn't
okay.
even a Marvel book. I think it was an Image. I think it was an Image book.
Oh, I know. It's is it Aphrodite?
Yes.
Beautiful. That's,
So that was a bit
that
of
is
a
a
shock.
solid swerve. That's
I
good
don't
stuff.
even know how it happened, because if it was a Marvel book, it would have made sense. I mean, it wouldn't have been great, but it's like, oh, the printer's just got the PDF mixed up. But,
But for it to be a complete, that's brilliant. And it's in a horrible way. That's great.
I wish I'd hung on to it as like a relic of bad comic production.
But I had something recently. I think it was. I can't think what book it was, where it had the same chapter twice in it. That was novel. I've also had something where some of the pages were upside down.
Yeah.
I don't know how it happens, but it seems to happen frequently enough that it's a little bit ridiculous.
It's annoying. It's like you say, this doesn't... I mean, I work in a library, so I know that sometimes print books will be missing pages and things like that.
Yeah, it does happen. But
print books, it's extremely rare compared to comic books, where it seems to happen far too frequently.
Yeah, I think everybody I know who reads comics has had at least one strange experience with trades. I was going to try and make that a segue, but I don't know how. So screw it, let's just run with it. So, speaking of strange experiences with trades, let's talk about our sponsor.
Yes. Somewhere where hopefully you will be able to get your comic books and your trades and your graphic novels in a form that is readable and is the correct comic book for the cover, which is,
Nailed it.
That's the thing, yeah. And those people are Travelling Man, I believe.
They are, and they're based in Manchester, Leeds, York, and Newcastle. There are comic book suppliers when we're allowed to go there, which kind of we can, because they're doing click and collect, and they're available online at travellingman.com. They also sell, as Angela's eager to point out, Funko Pops, board games, RPGs, CCGs,
Magic the
manga,
Gathering cards,
other stuff. But they're our guys, and shout out to them for surviving in this strangest of times.
Yeah. Here's to the day when we can actually visit a comic book shop again. Man, that'll be a novelty.
I cannot wait to 2025.
I know.
So also in the kind of sponsors line that I insist on trying to pan off as a sponsor, Manchester Comic Book Club is where we came to Graffity's Wall, which was our March book. And our next book in April will be 4 Kids Walk into a Bank. We'll still be online, I assume. So people from all over are welcome to join us. You can find us online at Manchester Comic Book Club Facebook group.
Yeah, we have a Facebook group. And there is a Twitter also.
There is a Twitter.
Is that Mank Comic Book?
Mank Comic Book. I wish it was something better. Yeah. But Manchester Comic Book Club was too long. MCBC was taken. We're also on Instagram for some reason.
I've not checked out the Instagram page. I must do that.
Not a lot on it. I can't lie. For some reason, I'm determined that Instagram is the best platform for like comic book related stuff, because obviously it's a visual medium and it scans. But it seems like anyone who's interested in the book club is unaware of that.
We should do a poll of the book club and just say, look, guy, how many of you are aware of the Instagram page?
Because it's not enough.
Because it's not, yeah.
But yeah, we're on most of the social medias, so hit us up and we will add you to the Skype and we will hang out and talk comics, and that'll be fun.
Yeah.
So on with the business then.
Yes.
Our March meeting was about Graffity's Wall.
Yes.
Written by Rom V. Drawn by Anand RK. Lettered by Aditya Bidikar, which I can't say as fast as Matt, and it still pains me.
Yeah.
And coloured by Anand R.K., Jason Wordy, and Irma Nivilla.
Yeah, that's, I mean, pronunciation of names is not the easiest.
Yeah, I am terrible at pronunciations of names, and I am sorry if I've if I've done any of these ones wrong.
Yeah.
But I think I've nailed it all.
I think they're all right. Yeah.
Grafity's Wall was originally published in 2018 through Unbound, which is like a crowdfunding type deal.
Yes. So people pledge to get the book made, and then Unbound make the book, and then share profits with the creators of the book.
Entirely that. Thank you, Angela.
You're welcome.
And I think you can still get the digital version through Unbound because I got it from them last year. There's also a nice hardback expanded edition available through Dark Horse, which came out mid-2020. Mid-2020, but seems to be that it just disappears from online book places and then reappears is what I found. This was originally going to be our January book club book. And when I looked like on Amazon in December, they swore it wasn't out yet.
Yeah, so. They were like, no, this has not been published. Don't be ridiculous. Yeah.
But it is, so you can get it, and it is real. I think, I've got it. Yeah. I assume you've got it, otherwise.
Yeah,
okay,
I have.
Yeah. It is not available on Comixology or anything like that, though, which is...
It's weird. I don't know whether that's because of Unbound. Maybe they have, like, the exclusive digital rights. Yeah, is what I'm wondering.
That could be true, I hadn't thought about it, but... And I haven't looked on Dark Horse's website to see if they've got, like, a digital edition either, so... That's a good point. Maybe it is the kind of Unbound digital versus Dark Horse hardcovery. I'm not sure. The expanded edition, worth pointing out, I suppose, basically includes an like a forward introduction type thing from Kieran Gillen, who you might know from other comics.
Yeah.
Also includes a third afterward from Aditya Bidikar, I believe, is if I'm correct. Yeah. Talking about the process of lettering. We've also got some kind of arts design pages from Anand RK to round us off, which is all quite a nice little addition. I think it's some nice process things.
I have an actual Unbound one.
Hoo-hoo, interesting.
And I can tell you what's in the Unbound version if you get it. You don't have a lot of extra stuff in it. You get basically a letter from the founders of Unbound saying, hey, isn't our publishing idea amazing?
That's why you know so much about how that works then, Angela.
See, I've known. And then you get letters from Ron V and Anand RK at the back with a little biography of who the people who worked on it are. And then a list of the supporters. And Kieran Gillen is indeed a supporter.
Yeah.
Can confirm from the list there he is on the supporters list, along with a couple of other names that are vaguely familiar to me.
Yeah, there's some significant names in the supporters list. It's interesting because I purposely got the Dark Horse expanded hardback because I've got the digital version from Unbound and I wanted to see what the difference was.
Yeah, you see, I just went for, because we didn't know that it existed or not, or online retailers didn't know whether it existed or not.
Yeah, you had to get what you could get, I feel you.
Yeah, and that was my choice.
It's good, we've got comparisons to make. We'll take a poll and see how many people could find the Unbound edition in the wild.
Yes, as it exists.
So before we dive into Grafity's Wall, I am going to state that this is by Ron V.
Yes.
And we have something of a storied history of just adoring Ron V and the other guys involved in White Noise Collective, White Noise Studios, whatever they're currently going by. So I'm going to try and be like, within reason and approach this as if people have not heard our previous talks about Paradiso, and that might actually be the only Ron V book we've talked about.
I think that is the only one, because we did in a previous podcast, live children, we did a very white noise Christmas.
We did.
We did, and that was one of the books that we did.
Yes, it is. And
but I don't think we've had chance to talk about some of his other stuff, which is also very good.
Yes, I mean, spoilers, I like this book a lot.
Spoilers, I agree with you.
So, in a nutshell, Grafity's Wall is the story of 4 teenagers in Mumbai from quite poor neighborhoods.
Yep.
Who are all quite creative in different ways and are kind of brought together just cause, really. We don't really find out why. You certainly get, like, Jay and Grafity seem to have known each other for a while. It's unclear how the other two come into it, apart from the fact they hang around with them. They're just all in the same place.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, that is how people make friends a lot of the time.
It's true.
And it kind of follows their story over a brief snapshot of time in Mumbai.
Yep.
And it's I guess it's kind of a coming of age story, but also kind of a story about art and about being an outsider and
about your place in the world and the city of Mumbai itself and what it does to people.
Yeah. All those things. I don't know if you've seen, but there was a recent interview article about place in comic with Ron V through, I think it was sketched.com, where they were talking about like the different perceptions of a city and how different people will always view it differently and remember being there differently, and interesting stuff. But yeah, something that I guess isn't often depicted. And Ron V talks about how, Anand RK's view of Mumbai as someone who still lives there, and Aditya Bidikar's view of Mumbai will differ from his own because he lived there when he was younger and then he's bounced around, which it's interesting. I think it does all inform the version of Mumbai that we see here, which...
Yes, there is. It feels a little bit autobiographical in a way.
Yeah, it definitely has vibes of that. I think especially when you bring into it stuff like Grafity or Suresh, to real name him for a minute there, as a character, kind of as an artist, and then obviously we've got Anand RK, who is an artist. I feel like you get vibes from that. And
oh yes, definitely.
And then there's stuff about Chasma being a writer, which obviously then, there's a whole thing here for the autobiographical argument, I think.
Yeah, there are definite parallels between the creators and the characters, and it definitely comes through.
Yeah, and I like that. I like that this feels like both a work of fiction, but also an autobiographical or semi-autobiographical depiction of teenage life in Mumbai.
Yeah.
And I really don't want to do this. I feel really bad, and it pains me to do it, but quite often people say, well, the city is really a character in its own right.
Yeah, people often say that, but it literally is in this.
This is one of those examples where that is the truth and isn't just something that's being said to fill space. And I think that's the thing. Whilst Mumbai is a predominant character within Grafity's Wall, it's also a interesting landscape for Suresh, Jay, Chasma, and Syra. Nailed it. Got all 4.
Well done.
That's what I do. And It's just good, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just really, really good. It's got everything in there. It's got, the art is really, because the art of the city is interesting, because you've got like, it's a mix of simple and yet detailed art, which sounds really cheesy and weird, but you'll just have
but it is true. That is exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's simple yet detailed. You'll have like a block of colour in the background of a panel, and then you'll have a person, and that will be really detailed, or it'll be a room, and the colour of the room is fairly standard, and it's just one colour, there's no real shading, but there'll be huge amounts of detail in the items that you see in the room, and it's just really clever because it gives you that feeling of it is a graphic novel, but also it feels real in a way because you've got all that detail in there, and it's almost like if you were wandering through these places and seeing these people, you might just not notice the background as much. You might just zero in on these little details as if you're actually there with them, and it makes it a bit more real.
I completely agree. I think you've done a great job with that explanation. Well done. It's just really captures that kind of busy, chaotic, and energetic vibe of a city, I think, throughout, which I think it's rare. I think a lot of the time we see people trying to depict the vibes of a city. A great example is we talked about Savage like a week ago.
We did, yes.
And whilst we all liked Savage and it's set in London, I don't feel like they ever nail
it's London.
That it's London, or the feel or energy of it. And I feel like they do in this. I mean, okay, I've not been to Mumbai.
No, nor have I.
So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Mumbai is nothing like this. But there's kind of a chaotic nature. The scenes when we see Jay driving his bike through the streets, and they're all just packed with cars, and it looks insane. And I think the energy and the feeling behind it is all very real. I think Anand K's art is as important to this whole piece as Ron V's writing is. I think together they paint a really vibrant, emotional and energetic kind of picture of a city on the other side of the world to us.
Yeah. And it's definitely, because sometimes you'll think, oh yeah, that is the writer and that is the artist. This feels like it's completely a collaboration all the way through.
Yeah.
It doesn't ever feel like, well, clearly notes were given here, or clearly the artist went off and did their own thing here. Every single panel, you think, yeah, they both knew what was going on, and it's everything that they want to convey is conveyed in both the art and the writing, because it's all together. It's seamless.
It is.
It is.
It really is. And I think as a creative team, I think from writing through to art, through to letters, through to colours, it's one of the most like cohesive, well-structured graphic novels I've read in a long time. And I really enjoyed rereading it as well. I think when I first read it last year, I thought it was great, and I still do now, which I think is a good sign that going back to it, it's still real good.
Still
Angela.
good.
Still good.
It is. It's got a lot of impact. I mean, I started off, I read the first bit of chapter 1, we do call them chapters, don't we? Yeah. So I sort of read chapter 1 and I liked it. But then by the time I get to chapter 2, I just literally didn't stop. I was just like, no, I need to read more of this, and I need to read more of it right now. And sometimes I will admit with a comic, I'm a bit of a lazy reader in that I don't look over every panel and I don't pay attention. And I'm just like, particularly if there's a lot of words and I'm too busy reading all the words to concentrate on much else. But here I did actually take the time to read every panel, to look at every panel, and actually go, oh, and actually spend time on each page taking it all in. And that's not something I do with every book. I can probably count on one hand the number of times it's happened in the last 12 months. But here, I was like, no, I need to actually properly read every panel, because every single panel is doing something. It is adding to the story in some way. And a lot of the time that's emotional rather than plot, because it's not a traditional plot. It's things happen, events happen in an order, thus there is a plot. But
well said.
Yeah, but more than that, it's every single panel has something to say about it's either reflecting the city or it's emotion to do with the characters. And it's rare that there's no filler. There's no filler at all in this. Like, every single bit of it is important. There's not a single panel that just didn't need to be there. It all needed to be there because it's all got something to contribute to the overall story. And that's really good. And you don't get that with every book. It's not as common as I'd like it to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think, every little bit of Grafity's Wall is kind of grasping for your attention and completely deserves it. And it does make me wish that we got more books that felt this way. And this kind of... It feels like it's a book that is close to the heart of Romvi and Anand RK, and I would assume everybody involved, which is nice. As you said about, just reading chapter 1 and going straight to chapter 2, it's a similar thing I had with Black Mamba, which was Romvi's other crowdfunded book. I think you can still pick it up through Etsy, or at least you could at one point. Yes,
I got it at Thought Bubble a couple of years ago. Yeah, I remember.
It's well worth having.
It's so good, yeah.
And that is another book that I think is like, you start reading it and it's 4 short stories and you think, I'll read one, I'll put it down, and you just don't. You don't. You read all of it and then you think, maybe I'll read it again, it's okay. And I think this is a similar feel, that it feels like 4 short stories that are interlinked, but not.
Yeah.
I think you could read any issue of this alone. Well, not even issue. I feel like you could read the chapters of this book on their own and it would still feel like a well-told story. So, unless I'm mistaken, the chapters are What Goes Up, Jungle Shooter, American Chop Suey, and Bombay Talkies.
That seems right.
Cool.
Seems right. But
totally know what they're called.
Yeah, all the characters and all the chapter names. You see, extra.
I'm on fire today.
But each one does have a coherent beginning and middle and end, even within the whole thing. Yeah,
and it's interesting because even though we see Chasma appear in, I think, the second chapter, and then he is more predominant. The third chapter focuses on his story as someone from China who has moved to Mumbai for university and is working in a Chinese restaurant, and it kind of talks about some quite difficult subjects like the racism he has to deal with whilst working in Mumbai. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because although it is a kind of light-hearted story at times, I think it's
it goes dark,
a lot darker at others, and deals with deals with tough subjects to deal with in a really, I guess, sensitive, balanced way. So it doesn't feel like because
it's never like, hey, we're making a comment about immigration here. It's done really naturally, and you can completely believe that it is based on actual experience about, this is what it's like.
Yeah, and I think that's really... I think it's important to be able to deal with tough issues in a way that feels natural and feels like it's the way to bring things up in conversation. And I think, as we've said, this is a story largely about people who are the outsider. And in the case of someone like Chasma, we do see that he talks a lot about rejection and he talks a lot about hate. So his whole thing is that he writes letters essentially to no one at times.
Yeah, we never find out who this mysterious Mary he writes to is, do we?
I assumed it was his sister, but I don't think we're ever told.
We're never explicitly... I assumed it was a person, but we never find out exactly who she is. And then he just writes random letters to people and gives them out. Yeah,
and he says he's written letters to Suresh and Jay and whoever, people he knows, but then people have been quite harsh with him and quite angry towards him at times, and that he has to deal with rejection because of it. But he feels like being on the outskirts of Mumbai is as close to acceptance as he's going to get at times, which is incredibly sad, but interesting and almost borders on the relatable in some ways.
They're all very relatable in different ways because they've all got hopes and dreams and all the rest of it. And as teenagers, everyone has hopes and dreams, and sometimes you don't have the control in your life to achieve those hopes and dreams, which unfortunately is the case for some of them here. I mean, Jay's story is just like the most tragic because he was so close to actually getting his dream. And it's like ironically, like he takes the drugs. He's like, no, you don't want to do that. And he just has this little packet of drugs. And I'd forgotten about that until he gets captured by the corrupt police officer who's like, yeah, I've caught you with drugs. And it's like the only reason he has those is because he was trying to help his friend.
He was doing the right thing.
And even when he does the right thing, it's backfired on him. So no wonder he has no faith in legitimate enterprise and actually getting a, normal job that doesn't pay as much as slightly illegal activities, even though the price of those illegal activities personally and emotionally is quite high for him. It's really, really tragic. But that's the thing. It's like, he's a drug runner and he delivers drugs around and he's a criminal, but he's also really sympathetic because this is not a situation of his own making in a way. This is a situation that through one reason or another he's sort of been forced into, and that's quite relatable. Sometimes we've had a choice and we make the wrong choice, or sometimes we don't have a choice, or sometimes making the right choice leads to terrible consequences. So it's really relatable in that this is how real life is. It's not happy fairy tales all the time. It sucks at times, and even doing the right thing doesn't always help you in the end. It's really, because it's normally in these stories the hero learns a lesson, or a character learns a lesson, like he did the right thing and he realizes the right thing is the good thing because good things will come out of it, and he's doing the right thing and all it brings him is pain and suffering. And it's like, that's a more realistic outcome and that's a more painful outcome for the character, but that's what life's like. You can't predict it.
Well said. And
there you go. I'm going very deep.
Quite deep, yeah. I'm impressed with us.
This is really deep, yeah.
But I do think it's interesting because I think the group of characters we get are sympathetic and are relatable, and I think no matter where you're from or who you are, you've probably known someone who you can see in one of these people. You've probably maybe you've known the artist who's struggling. Maybe you've known the struggling artist or the writer who doesn't know how to achieve what they want, or the rapper who's made terrible mistakes, or the actress who never quite get the opportunity she thinks she's going to get.
Yeah.
And I think whilst that's a very simplified version of explaining these four characters, I do think that especially if you know or are a creative person, there's something to see of yourself or see of people you know in this story, which is good. And I think it helps make it feel like more than a coming of age story and more than just the sum of its parts. There we go. More than just the sum of its parts. Yes.
Nice.
Phone down. I'm going. But whilst we've focused on the artwork quite heavily, and you have to, it's real good. There are also some bits of dialogue that I loved the first time. I loved the second. I'm gonna give you two examples. If you've got anything, by all means. The first one is there's a bit where Suresh talks to Jay after he's been saved from the corrupt police officer, Inspector Saab, to use his character name.
Oh, nailing it.
Where Suresh talks about the fact that he, does his graffiti in the places he shouldn't because he likes the idea of sneaking into someone else's world and leaving a mark, and that they have to erase it, but they can't unsee it. And that's a simplified version.
Yeah.
But it's good stuff.
It's really good.
I think it's one of my favorite pages of this book. I think it is relatable and understandable. I think it completely tells you who Suresh is in a handful of lines, and I think that is really expertly done. And I think it's even in Kieran Gillen's intro. I think that's something he quotes. Yes, it is. So Kieran Gillen agrees with me. So I'm right. There's also right at the end. I say right at the end. There's probably about 20 pages to go at this point. Towards the end, there's also a page with, and this confused me because at first I thought it was one character's narration, but I think this is also Suresh. I think most of the narration is Suresh.
Yeah, but it looks like it's Chasma's, doesn't it?
Yeah, and it's and perhaps this is what brought us all together. That we were all, in that moment in our lives, in love with the promise of things to come.
Yeah.
Which feels like one of the most classic literature-esque.
It's very literary in the best way.
Yeah, and it is good though. And even though it feels like something that's been lifted from a much older work of fiction, it is good. And it could have easily been in Catcher in the Rye or that kind of older coming of age type story.
Yeah.
But it's so good. They're good lines, Angela.
They're really good. I mean, I'm going to go with, there's a couple that I picked out, which is the American Chop Suey conversation that Chasma has with Yai, I think his name is, and he's talking about what you put in American Chop Suey, and when people eat it, they like it, but they're not going to know you can't figure out all the ingredients. And that's what Mumbai's like. That's what the city's like. It's this combination of all these different things, and that's what makes it good, like American Chop Suey. And then also at the end, there's that whole bit where it's literally the last few pages before we get back to the final moment at the wall, where it's like the choice that Chasma has to have, this choice we all make. Do we embrace the reality of our lives and find beauty in it, or do we fly in search of escape only to find beauty in the bittersweet realization of its futility? And that's the moment when you find out what sort of grown-up you'll be. And that's really, really good, man. That's just
it's so good. And I just
it's like, if that was if those were words in a novel, it would be taught in English literature classes, is the point. It's that kind of thing. These are the sorts of things that would be discussed by students in universities literature wise, and it's in a beautiful comic book.
Yeah.
And that's why I get cross when people sort of say, yeah, but comic books. And it's like, comic books, they are as literature. They are as valuable as literature. There's probably a word for that, but we'll go with that. As anything that you just get in a prose book, because those words are really impactful, and it's extra impactful because you can see the expression on the characters' faces as they're saying it. So, teach more graphic novels in school is my opinion on that one.
I completely agree, and I think it's something that we've seen in a lot of Romvi's work. I think he's written some of the best comics the last few years, and as we've called out, Black Mamba is really good.
There's some really, really good stuff in there as well, yeah.
Yeah, I also think, obviously, it was very celebrated. These Savage Shores is a really great, really different kind of, I guess, vampire story in its core, but vampire story in a completely different way than you've ever had, drawing on Indian mythology and things we just don't have in any medium, not just comics. Which is a really good read. I think Paradiso, as we've said before, I'm not gonna do the full speech, but Paradiso is good.
And that's another one that cities are important, people.
Yeah, definitely. Also, that's a good point. Is Black Mamba's set in Mumbai as well?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
But I think we see a very different kind of Mumbai in.
Well, that's done from the perspective of the first story. That is the one that really impacted me about the dog and God, that ripped my heart out and stomped all over it. That was from the point of view. Was he a detective?
Yeah, I think they're all from the point of view of the detective, but drawn by different artists and different.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, Black Mamba's real good. We'll do an episode on that at some point. Also, Green and Blue, which came out last year through Image, which is also Ramvi and Anand RK, which is jazz noir horror.
That is a genre, yes.
Definitely worth checking out if you're into horror, and it's Anand RK's art, but completely different. It's got more of a kind of Dave McKean Arkham Asylum styling, which we kind of see. Okay, you don't see with the Unbound version, but you can kind of see that style of artwork in his process artwork at the back of the expanded edition. You can see that there are different styles that he does, and so Blue and Green, very different but very cool. Which I would definitely recommend. We've also they've got a new book coming out. So Romvi and Anand RK have got a new book coming out through Vault, which we've mentioned before, which is Radio Apocalypse.
Yes.
I can't wait.
That looks really good.
I think it's definitely going to appear in I think it'll be our April roundup.
I think we've already earmarked that for a roundup, haven't we? Yeah.
So I don't have a lot more to say about Graffity's Wall. I probably could, but I think for the...
Yeah, I think the thing is there isn't anything bad about it. There's nothing...
No, I have no complaints.
Nitpick. I think that when we tend to discuss a book more is when we don't understand something, or something doesn't work, or something's not quite right, or something along those lines, when we have issues with the book, as it were. Whereas here, it's just a damn good book, and people should read it, and it's just really good. The writing's great, the art's great. There's not a single part of this I don't love to bits. So
I agree. I think every member of the creative team does a great job. I think Bidikar's lettering
I was going to
is...
say, should we mention the lettering? Because that has been...
that is who we are.
That is who we are.
So.
We are, justice for letterers. Yeah, because the lettering is really good. Like everything else. But it's almost like... What I like is it's almost, at times, it's almost like handwritten.
Yeah, which works, especially when we're focusing on stuff like Chasma's story about writing letters.
Yeah.
The handwritten vibes definitely benefit it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to... Here's a thing to throw out. You actually see some of his writing as well. Like, you have a look into his notebook and you can see a page of his writing. And he's very descriptive and lovely writing. Yeah, it's just really good. There's only so many times we can tell you how good it is.
I'm fairly sure, and I could be wrong, but I'm fairly sure that Aditya Bidikar does talk about how he hand-lettered all of this. So it's not like a digital job. I think this is all his own.
Yeah.
Painstakingly slow. Handwritten. And in the process work, I think he talks about the different style of lettering and like the Darwin Cook style and different things like that, which I guess we don't really look into the different versions of styling that we get as much as we probably should. I mean, okay, we apparently do. That's who we've become doing this podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, credit where it's due, from writing to art to colouring to lettering. This is real well done. It
is. And I will say, reading the epilogue, I did cry when I read the epilogue.
I can get that.
Just the very last image just got me. I don't know why. It just did. That very last panel just really got... I mean, to be fair, I was probably crying slightly before then, but that last bit. I
do like it's got that almost like 80s film thing of like telling you what happened to all the characters after the story.
Yeah.
Which I do like. I do like it a lot. I think all I can really say at this point is people should go read Graffity's Wall. And
read it and then reread it and then read it again. But yeah, read it.
And it does bug me, and whilst I'm glad Romvi's career is going in a great direction and he's doing more work for Image and Vol, and he's working for DC on Swamp Thing, Future State and Catwoman at the moment, and I think all that is great and it's all things I'm interested in, don't get me wrong, but I do wish this got more attention. I
think this is... I mean, Black Mamba's really good, but I think this is better. So I think
they're good in different ways, and they show a lot of variety, but I think I'm a Graffity's Wall kind of guy.
Yeah, it is a shame that this book should be way more, it shouldn't have had to have gone on Unbound. I mean, thank goodness Unbound exists. And to be fair, he's probably got more money from Unbound than he would from some of them, the mainstream publishers.
That could be true.
But at the same time, you're like, this should have been a book that should have just been published by somebody because it's that good, and it deserves to be better known, because this is why you read comic books.
I think that is completely fair. I think it takes a graphic novel of this quality to like really hammer home that this is why I'm into comics. This is what I'm here for. And it's got to be said, I think Dark Horse needs to print Black Mamba. If that's, I mean, providing that's something that Romvi wants and something that... I think the world deserves Black Mamba, and more people need Graffity's Wall.
They do, yeah.
Zach out.
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing.
Mic drop. Yes. But no, in conclusion, read Graffiti as well.
I agree. It's the conclusion we've all reached.
Yes.
So, on that bombshell, I say that too often. I need to stop doing it.
You need a new catchphrase.
We've been Angela and Zach, and we will continue to be.
Yes.
We will also continue to be bigger than capes. And remember that comics are bigger than capes.